Transfer. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight, March 2nd, 2023, for our regular City Council meeting. It's 6:30 p.m. I'm going to do the council roll call. So, Council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton
Here.
and Council Member Stroop.
Here.
Elizondo.
Here.
Bliss. Kerner.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
And Menchow.
Present.
With 7 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. And would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you. And thank everybody for being here tonight. We are live broadcasting our meeting tonight. If you did get an opportunity to speak as part of the council meeting tonight, I would ask that you please use the microphone that's up here because that allows for everybody that is live broadcasting to hear what comments are being said. If you do get the opportunity to speak tonight, I would ask that you introduce yourself by name, and then if from one of the departments, what position you're from, or if you're a resident of Fair Oaks Ranch or not. All right? And we had nobody signed up for citizens to be heard tonight. Is there anybody here that did not get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? All right, we'll move on to our presentations. We have 2 presentations tonight. First, we'll start off with a couple 5-year awards that we have. And Jennifer Hudson's going to lead us through this.
Good evening. I'm filling in for Joanna Merrill. My name is Jennifer Hudson. I am the HR and Communications Specialist. And tonight we're presenting Julie Lovelace and William Poole their 5-year service awards. They're fully vested. Yay. Yeah. So I'm going to start with Julie this evening. On February 1st in 2018 as payroll and accounting specialist. A year later, she was promoted to an interesting thing about Julie is she may have found herself in the world of finance, but she began her career as a research scientist. Her bachelor's degree is in biology, and she is a published scientist. Her, lucky for us, she made it to her way to the financial world, and since 2008, she's been hard at work at crunching numbers for the city, and she excels at it. Julie is always looking for opportunities to grow and learn, and while working for the city, she's become a certified bookkeeper, earned the following professional certifications from the Government Finance Officers Association, the overview of budget best practices, as well as the government-wide financial statements, conversions, and consolidations. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds super amazing. To continue to be the best in her field, she decided to go back to school and earn another degree in accounting from Western Governors University, and she graduated in January 2020. Her supervisor states that Julie's leadership and her initiative is a great asset to the department and the city as a whole. So congratulations, Julie.
Yeah, nice pin set too.
You want to, Casey's going to get your picture real quick, so. Yay,
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for what you do for the city. Truly appreciate it.
And her dad's here to watch it, so that was even more special.
Oh,
Next up is Will Poole. Come on up, Will. Oh, I'm so sorry.
well, he's coming up.
So Will started with the city in January of 2018. But he was a rancher way before that. So I learned the other day while attending Bernie High School, Will worked out at the country club. And so as soon as he graduated, literally, as soon as he graduated, the day after. He went full-time for the country club, and he worked there for a year before he came and joined us. He was originally hired as a utility technician, and during his 5 years here at the city, he's moved up in positions twice. In May of 2019, he earned his Class C groundwater treatment operator license and was promoted to Water Wastewater Operator 1. And then in November of 2019, he earned another certification, Class C ground wastewater. He's also infamous for no wipes in the pipes, Will, that's him. Which allowed him to be promoted to wastewater operator 2. So recently, he just received another certification in water. And one of his supervisors states this about Will. Will shows up to work ready to go, tackles the big messy jobs without complaint, and takes pride in a job well done. He's a valuable asset to the City of Fair Oaks utility team. Congratulations, Will.
Congratulations. Thank you for all you do for us. I know it's not an easy job. There's probably more than sometimes. Yeah, nice pin set too that they. You're not gonna wear this one to work? Oh, I screwed up. Yep, thank you. Next up is the presentation of the Government Finance Officer Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2021, an award for outstanding achievement in popular annual finance reporting for its popular annual finance report for the year ended September 30th, 2021.
Finance Director. At the city, certificates that they received, this is a very special year because what we used to look at called the ACFR Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, we've earned for several years. Also been earned for so that submitted for the first time. And this lady here, come on up. Because I certainly didn't earn these. I wasn't here at the time, but they were. Come on. These are people that we can attribute that success to, and I want to thank them for all their hard work that they've done and congratulate them on winning the Triple Crown. Now, if you go to the GFOA website, you won't see that yet because they still have the 2020 information. But once they change it over, then we'll be there. So congratulations to both of you.
Congratulations to all. Next, we'll move on to our consent agenda tonight. We have several items on the consent agenda. First is the approval of the February 16th, 2023 regular City Council meeting minutes. Next is the approval of the February 23rd, 2023 special City Council meeting minutes. Third, approval of the Front Gate Unit 6 updated tree preservation plan. Fourth, approval of a resolution authorizing participation in the National Opioid Settlement. Fifth, approval of Councilmember Bliss's absence from the February 16th, 2023, April 20th, 2023, and May 4th, 2023 regular City Council meetings. And sixth, approval of Councilmember Kerner's absence from the February 16th, 2023 regular City Council meeting. Is there any council member that would like to move an item from consent to consideration? And with that, then, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
From Chesley, and a second? From Scott? All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to our consideration and discussion items tonight. First up is the consideration and possible action on approving a law enforcement and patrol agreement between the City of Fair Oaks Ranch and the Fountains Homeowners Association. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm Tim Mooring, Chief of Police for the Fair Oaks Police Department. Tonight I bring you for your consideration another law enforcement agreement similar to the other agreements that we've done in the past with Elkhorn Ridge, Front Gate, Setterfield most recently. This is for the Fountains Homeowners Association, which is located southwest corner of Fair Oaks Parkway, Detail Corn, a small gated subdivision. About December timeframe, we were contacted by the HOA president, Ms. Kathy Phillips, who inquired about patrol services, preventative patrol services, and parking enforcement within the gated community. We provided her with the law enforcement agreement drafted by the city attorney's office. She very quickly turned that around, got that back to us, and we were able to get it back on the agenda here for you tonight. Outside of this law enforcement agreement, I don't believe there's any other ordinances we need to pass for the subdivision. The speed limit is set at 15 miles an hour, and the fire lane is, I believe, only one in the center island right there where the gazebo is. So it should be almost immediately available to the residents there in the Fountains. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Go ahead.
So just a quick question. I used to live in a gated neighborhood, and we did the same thing. And we had to get, we had to notify all the neighbors, and we actually had to get approval by a majority of the neighborhood. Was there any notification or communication process that you were aware of, or the residents going to be shocked by this at all?
Not that I'm aware of. Our communication goes through whoever is the representative person for the HOA. That's something that Ms. Phillips would probably.
Probably have to go up
Would
there.
you mind?
Sorry.
Everybody wants to hear.
Kathy Phillips of the Fountains HOA, and we have 30 homes in our community, and we had 19 that said yes, they do want the patrol, and the remaining 11 said that they did not. So the majority did.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I needed.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Any other questions from council? Any other questions or comments from anybody here tonight? Then could I get a motion to approve the agreement between the City of Fair Oaks Ranch and the Fountains Homeowners Association for police services within the gated community of the Fountains?
So moved.
How about,
In harmony.
we have a motion from Michelle and a second from Roy.
Works, that works.
Any other comments from council? With that, then we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Chief. We'll move on to our second item tonight, which is the consideration and possible action approving an emergency ordinance amending the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for emergency response costs for debris removal due to the recent ice storm. And I believe with this item, there are two motions that we have to consider on this item, and as directed by our Home Rule Charter. And Dan, would you mind explaining the situation to us quickly?
That's correct, Mayor. Because this is before the council as an emergency measure, the first thing we have to do is have a vote that 2/3 of the council agrees that it in fact constitutes an emergency. And if that passes, then the second motion would be on the ordinance itself. And what that means is that the city can begin acting on what's in the ordinance after the first reading. It does still come back for a confirmation a second time. But that's what's straight from the charter, so.
So tonight we'd have two motions, one
That's
to
correct.
validate an emergency condition, and then second to approve the,
Right, and the first one has to pass by 2/3 majority. The second one, it doesn't specify. And all that would mean is, let's say it doesn't get a 2/3 majority on the first vote, then it would just have to come back for a regular second reading.
Okay. All right.
So this particular item relates to the destruction of our trees that happened because of the ice storm. And as you'll recall, last council meeting, we had a motion to appropriate $300,000 from the fund balance. And so it needs to come back to you for approval to do that. And so what we've done is prepared an ordinance for you to consider to appropriate that money. We had a motion, or we had a not-to-exceed contract proposed of $300,000 for brush pickup related to the ice storm. And so once you, if you do approve the emergency, then that'll be the first reading, and then we'll bring it back up next time on consent for the second reading of the ordinance.
Any questions from council? Yes, ma'am.
So I believe the vendor we went with, the amount proposed was less than 300,000. So if it does come in under 300,000, will the remaining money go back into the unallocated?
It can, certainly.
Okay.
But I want to clarify that the vendor that we actually contracted with, we have a per cubic yard rate. So we don't know if it's going to go above or below that amount until we actually get out in the field and start accumulating and doing the monitoring and measuring it. So if it gets to what we've agreed to is when we get to the 15 to 17,000 cubic yards, which would start to consume the 300,000, then we would need to come back to the city council and, obviously provide an update and/or if we needed additional information. I hope he gets it done for under 300, but we don't know. There wasn't a single vendor that was guaranteeing that.
Yes.
My question relates to during our discussions about the funding mechanisms, one of the things that was mentioned is that we might consider not having our next cycle of bulk and brush pickup to help offset the cost of this. Has that decision been made, or where does that stand?
No, so that would be a decision for y'all to let us know, and then we would approach Republic with that.
So my concern about that is that I think a lot of people's perception is that that service is kind of incorporated into the fee they pay for their garbage collection. And I guess I wouldn't want to see people deferring tree maintenance, which is something that can mitigate future similar events, because there's not going to be a brush pickup, number one, and number two, then we'll have an extra accumulation of some of the bulk items that might, so I guess I would suggest that if we're going to use these prior period underruns to help fund this thing, that I would encourage this council to not put off the next cycle of bulk and brush pickup. Thanks.
Question on that.
Go ahead.
We don't necessarily have to make that decision tonight. We can bring that up later as a separate item. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. As of right now, it's a contracted twice-a-year bulk pickup, so unless council wants us to bring back that discussion, we're planning on moving forward with it.
So if no one asks to bring it back, then we're going to move forward with it, basically.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any questions or comments on this tonight from anybody here? Okay, then first, can I get a motion to confirm that an emergency condition exists related to the public health and safety which requires immediate action?
I so move.
Second.
From Laura and Emily. Any other comments from council? That we'll go ahead and vote on the motion.
Right.
No, I just want to comment that the thing that has characterized this as an emergency in my mind, because to me it's just a big mess to clean up, and a lot of it involved, messes on private property. But I think because of the type of weather we've had lately, that there is a real risk of a fire condition, and so that's how I've rationalized it in my mind and why I think it's something that's important for us to do for the community.
Thanks, Roy. Anybody else? With that, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then we do have a 2/3 vote, and the motion passes. And with that, then, can I get a motion to approve the FY 2022, 2023 budget amendment ordinance?
So moved.
From Roy,
Second.
Chesley, and any other comments from council? And with that, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, sorry
Roll
to
call.
interrupt you. This one requires
Oh, you're
a
right.
roll call.
Roll
Sorry.
call. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Christina for a roll call vote.
Council, when I call your name, please say yes or no regarding this motion. Mayor Maxton,
Yes.
Councilmember Stroop,
Yes.
Councilmember Elizondo,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss, Councilmember Kerner,
Yes.
and Councilmember Parker,
Yes.
Councilmember Menchow.
Yes.
It's a unanimous vote and the motion passes.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you, Rosie. Next, we'll move on to our third consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and possible action authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with Laser Spectacles Incorporated for providing a laser show for the annual July 4th celebration.
So, the city budgeted $35,000 this year for the 4th of July celebration. And the mayor's request, and as discussed at the last council meeting on February 16th, we went over a few different options of
No problems
Yeah.
with the Casey?
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. So, I'll just restart. So we budgeted $35,000 this year for the 4th of July celebration, and at the mayor's request and at last council meeting, on the February 16th, we went over several different options, including traditional fireworks, a laser show, a combination of the two, and then also a drone show. And just for reference and way of background, some of the reasoning for exploring the alternatives to a traditional fireworks show included just mitigating some of the fire risk with the drought condition. Last year, we had to cancel the 4th of July fireworks show we had planned because of the drought conditions. Exploring some options that address the concerns of our veteran community and some options that were less intrusive to pets and wildlife. So city staff pursued the laser show option based on initial city council feedback with the understanding that council members would solicit further input from residents. And if the city council approves having a laser show event, the city will finalize an agreement with Laser Spectacles, Inc. in the amount of $25,000. So we have $35,000 budgeted in the account of 01613-354. This agreement would be for $25,000. The additional budget would be used to cover the additional items associated with that event. And we'll work with the city attorney to finalize the agreement.
Clayton, if the council decides to do something other than a laser show, are you prepared to move forward on that?
Yes. Yeah, I've been in discussion with a fireworks vendor who still has availability, and we could get that done quickly as well.
Any questions from council?
No questions, but comments.
Comment?
Right. So I
Question?
don't know if I should wait or
Yeah.
make the comment now.
Any question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I watched the council meeting because this is when I was out of town, and I don't remember hearing a directive to go after quoting this, but it was cutting in and out. So did I miss something? I remember us talking about the options, but I don't ever remember directing people to go get a quote. So I'm just trying to figure out where that came from.
And I believe Clayton had already worked with them and gotten a quote prior to
Okay.
the last meeting.
We did, and we do have two options ready for you if you so choose.
Okay.
We just wanted to let you know that we have this particular one ready, and then as Tobin mentioned earlier, and when he asked me, we do have one with a local fireworks vendor that still has availability and we can contract with.
And I really think that was part of the question, is that we wanted to research, was it a fireworks or laser show? And then what you've done now is actually gone back to a fireworks vendor and gotten a quote for it. And
Yeah,
we're
with the
prepared.
laser vendor, just to let them know that there's a potential that we need their availability. So we basically have zeroed in on two different vendors, one for lasers and one for fireworks, both who still have availability.
They got their hands up there. Go next.
Chesley.
My question was, the laser vendor, do they also, at one point we talked about the fact that they also did fireworks. Does this specific one do both if you wanted to incorporate the two together?
This one doesn't. So the two that we're talking about, actually, the fireworks and the laser vendor actually partner together if you wanted a combination show. So that would just basically be two separate agreements if you wanted a combination of the two.
But it is possible.
Correct.
Okay.
I think my question is either for Dan or for Tobin. If we choose to make a motion such as to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with a fireworks vendor for $25,000, do you have to come back, or could we just approve that?
No, it's not posted on the agenda. It's posted specifically as a laser show on the agenda, so that would have to come back.
Wonderful. Okay.
So basically, if we do this tonight, we're basically saying we're doing a laser show because the other one isn't on the agenda.
Or we could turn down a laser show and then come back.
We could fail to make a motion.
Right.
Okay. And I guess let me ask another question, because I was watching the meeting, and I thought I heard that most citizens wanted fireworks. No?
I'm so glad you asked.
Well, so at the previous meeting, I don't believe there was not a discussion that said most residents wanted fireworks. But what we were walking away with is to get information on
To
to
seek
find
additional.
out what residents wanted.
Okay, and I think that was done, but is now not the appropriate time to talk about it?
It is.
How about I make a
I
motion to
I was gonna
table
do-
this agenda item, and we could discuss that?
Second the emotion.
Okay,
Second the
let's
motion.
discuss. Go ahead, Emily.
Okay, so I did post in two different areas. I posted on Nextdoor Neighbor, and then I also sent a message in a group me chat with a bunch of Fair Oaks moms. The Nextdoor Neighbor, I just checked it right before we started our meeting tonight. I had 194 votes on the poll, and 51% of those votes were for fireworks, 31% was for laser, and 18% was for neither. So there is a slight majority for fireworks there. In the Fair Oaks Ranch Group Me post that I did, 100% of the responses were for fireworks. And I think there were probably about 15 to 20 folks that responded in that chat. So it seems to me it's kind of overwhelming. However, now, with that said, I have the thought of, I know there's, the thing people are most concerned about with the fireworks seems to be the noise, right? The booms and it affecting maybe some of our military veterans as well as our animals. So my thought is, could we do a combination show with the lasers and the fireworks, but have the fireworks that don't have the big booms? So you can get the fireworks that we've all seen that are kind of like more showering fireworks, as opposed to those that have the big booms that cause the problems. So that would be something I think we should consider or look into.
I like that idea.
I think I think the other thing to consider is that, you know, the drought conditions. We've had to cancel shows. So we were going to throw a party and there was no party last year. We don't have that problem with lasers. So
Right.
we're kind of guaranteed to have something.
Well, maybe. What if it rains?
Can't have lasers in the rain.
Chesley.
So, I asked some people in the back 40 just where we are, and overwhelmingly back there, which it's obviously a smallish percentage because they're larger lots, the overwhelming majority in the back was nothing that made the loud booms and all of those things. So I actually like Emily's idea if we can incorporate both. It's kind of the best of both worlds, and it's less intrusive to the people that have the animals and the things in the back, as well as, like we said, the veterans. So I kind of like her idea to see if we can move forward with that.
Right now, the current item is tabled. Yeah.
We're discussing tabling.
Well, we're discussing tabling. All right. So we have a motion to table that was seconded. Clayton, if we move forward with tabling the item, would you have an opportunity to go back and come back with something that is in line with what the council has proposed now?
Yeah, it would essentially be two separate agreements, and I have had those conversations about a combination show, sorry. So it's something that's definitely feasible. The two vendors that I'm talking about work together on an annual basis, and I'm sure more often than that. So it's definitely doable.
Okay.
Clayton, I'm sorry, Matt.
Go
Have
ahead.
you talked to him about the less intrusive style of fireworks that the council mentioned? Does this vendor have those? Do we know?
I haven't spoken with them about just anything other than a traditional 4th of July show, but I definitely will speak with them about it.
At a minimum, maybe the stuff that flies lower. Okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely speak with them. I know what you're talking about, so will do.
Any other questions from council on the table motion? Any questions from anybody here tonight? We do have a motion on the table. Laura made the motion. Who seconded?
Emily seconded it, I believe.
Emily seconded.
Passed. All right. To table, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Then the motion is tabled. Thanks, Clayton. The next item that we have up tonight is discussion and possible action to pursue the cost and design for the construction of gateway features at one or more entrances to Fair Oaks Ranch. And Scott, are you going to lead us through this one?
Glad to. Wanted to take the opportunity to discuss with council and kind of report a little bit about what our branding committee's been doing regarding this topic. And as we've looked at this, we've had a chance, Michelle, Laura, and myself, and the staff members on the committee. In years past, the city had the observation tower that was kind of an iconic portion of the entrance to the city. And looking at a lot of different cities and areas around where we are, there is some type of feature that kind of announces where you are. This is Fair Oaks Ranch, and there was some great discussion concerning creating a new feature at the IH-10 corridor entrance to the Parkway, and potentially later on looking at what happens with 3351. We wanted to be able to. We had a discussion. Clayton's kind of took charge and found us a couple of vendors who we were scheduled to meet with. We did meet with a Zoom meeting with one who brought forth some very interesting points that we need to go ahead and discuss as a council insofar as being able to provide money towards engineering studies. And part of the discussion that we had was possibly putting since we live on the ranch, a ranch-style entrance feature at the top of the Parkway, over somewhere between the CVS area, and whether it be constructed out of steel or stone, whatever we decide to do. The great feature, the great comment that was brought up was this really needs to be engineered, and engineering obviously costs money.
I think to add on to that, in fact, we couldn't even get a quote on how much we thought it would cost or how much we would even ask for council to budget for until there was an engineering design, because they just didn't feel comfortable giving a quote until they had a much more detailed design of what it would look like. So we didn't want to go much further because it's going to require staff's time and potentially a future budget item without getting the consent of the council that this is a project that we want to move forward with. It's currently not in our budget as a project, and our committee doesn't have any funding, or at least $500. That's not enough, you know. So the committee wanted to come to council to see if you agree with a motion to move forward with working towards this feature design. We would come back with a budget request once we know what it is, but we didn't want to get too far down the road without making sure everyone in council was in agreement with moving forward with doing this.
Question. Would we need an engineering study for any style of, I guess, feature, if you want to call it that we put out there, or just the specific one that the idea of the ranch?
I got the impression that anything that we do is going to have, one, not only from a wind, you know, and natural causes type of perspective, but there's liability involved in putting something up that may potentially blow over at our intersection. So I think really that anything that we move forward with would need to have some engineering.
Do we have an idea of what an engineering study for something like that would cost? Do we have even a ballpark?
I don't, but I think the part, because it's right next to the roadway, and it's different than saying just an entrance to a house, if you will, or, you know, to a ranch. If they're going to put something over a roadway or up against the roadway, they have to make sure they want to understand what level of engineering they need so that it doesn't fall over. So I think that was the driver, and I'm not sure who would be, I don't know if it's Julio or whoever would be doing that engineering design, but if you don't mind it coming up and letting us know what you know on that.
Not to put you on the spot or anything, Julio.
Evening, Council. So, yes, Ms. Kerner's right. We would be reaching out to our GECs probably and speaking with them between Clayton and myself, and probably with our public works staff, and just discussing what would be needed. It's a new project, and most of our engineers, I would assume, are capable of doing the project. They've usually designed roadway features and that. I don't see the sign being any more difficult than what you'd see off of an I-10, overpass. So, on our end, there are engineering factors that need to go into it because of, like Ms. Kerner mentioned, just it's going to be going over a roadway. There's discussion on whether it be one archway going over the roadway, two archways. Even if you decide to go ahead and put some feature on the side of the road, you want to make sure that we set up the safety features. So there's some geo work and things like that that would be done to make sure we're putting in the right location, as well as putting in the safety features needed in case somebody hits it.
I think it's hard, just to finish up what I was thinking, it's hard for me to make a decision to say, yeah, let's go forward with something like this when we have no idea what the cost of even just the engineering portion of the study might be. I mean, because we've seen some of them be very small, and then we've seen some very large ones. So, you know, I'm trying to just even get a ballpark. Are we saying $10,000 for the engineering study, or are we saying 300,000?
So can I answer the question? I think the question is more, do you want to work on a gateway feature? And if you do, we will have to do an engineering study no matter what. Is this something that council wants to work on in the near future? If not, we will go work in a different direction for the branding committee, but I don't want to go too much further.
Yeah, I think this is along the lines what Laura's suggesting. I would think the next step is to come up with some kind of scope we could describe to our engineering firm and get an estimate of what they think it would cost to do the first pass at engineering on that. And then we could look at that and give us a flavor for what it would cost to do that piece. I will remind everybody and that I think it's been kind of a long-standing idea that the city could go to the MDD possibly and apply for a grant to help with this project. And I think it would be fair to say that, you know, if that was described to the MDD appropriately, there's a chance that some of the engineering costs that would be incurred on the front end would also be covered by that grant should it be awarded. So we should keep that in mind too. But it just seems like rather than going way down the thing, the next thing is to come back to council with some information about, based on a described scope of work to the engineering firm, what do they think the initial engineering would cost so that we can approve that.
And that's what the motion says. I just want to give permission to pursue cost and design and come back. I mean, I don't want to go any further or, you know, until everybody's agreement, or maybe the answer is we don't want to work on a gateway feature right now, and then we'll address some other.
Yeah, I've been hearing it for years that ever since the boat disappeared, we needed to replace it. That's all. That's my perspective.
Mayor, make a comment real quick, just as a reminder. So when we hire, whether it's an architect or an engineer, but in this case, it sounds like the council's talking about structural. So for an engineer, we have to hire engineering firms based off qualifications. So we'll need to identify the engineer, get them on board, and then start negotiating scope and price. And you're only allowed to negotiate with one engineer at a time. So that's what makes it difficult to bring in an estimate at this time, because we've got to go hire that engineer and bring them forward, or at least select the engineer, negotiate a scope and price, and bring that back. It's just part of the Texas Engineering Act.
So that is something we'd be seeking, Ms. Munchow. We'd go ahead and reach out to them, find out who's qualified, and then bring it back and say, okay, here's what we're looking at spending on this. Do y'all want to move forward? So.
Do we know who did the old structure? I mean, I don't know.
It probably was an engineer.
But it probably, yeah, it probably wasn't.
Bob Weiss was hammer and nails.
I don't think we need to go down the details right now. I think we're just looking for council agreement on whether we want to even move forward.
That's what I was going to reiterate, is that the questions that, Chesley, I think you're asking is really the next step. And so this would allow the branding committee and our city staff to go forward and get that information and bring it back to council to see if it's something that we want to add to a future budget.
Yes, sir.
Is that?
Yes.
So if you're looking for that feedback, I mean, I have no issue with the branding committee and or anyone moving forward to get more information. And I think personally, like everyone else has said, we have heard this a lot, and I think it's something that would be beneficial for the city. So, I mean, I'm for moving forward, but I would like more information, so.
Yep.
Agree.
Any other questions from council? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just going to make a motion.
What can we ask for questions from anybody here tonight? Okay.
I move to have the branding committee and city staff pursue the cost and design for the construction of gateway feature at one or more entrances for Fair Oaks Ranch.
Second.
From Laura and Roy.
Thanks, Roy.
What?
Did Roy beat you?
That's all right.
Any other comments from council? With that, then we'll vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Ready, now we got work to do.
Excuse me. Our next item up tonight is the consideration and possible action regarding requirements or expenditures associated with the local disaster. Tobin, I'm tracking, we don't have any consideration items tonight related to this.
That's right. We put it on the agenda as a standing item. Didn't know, Mayor, you've been participating in all the meetings. If you wanted to provide a quick update of where we're at and what's going on.
Yeah, I just had a couple notes, provide an update on the situation. We already discussed that a vendor's been selected, and that vendor will begin work on Monday of picking up the brush around the city. They're going to start in the northernmost part of our city, which would be Stone Creek Ranch, and they'll move south from there. The brush pickup will be done by counties. So starting in the north, they'll move south, but they're going to do all of Kendall County first, and so that we can document that, and then they'll move over to Comal County, and then finish with Bear County. All the procedures will be followed in all counties to make us available for any sort of reimbursement that may come from FEMA. So even though we know right now that Kendall County has authorized or made a local declaration, and the other two counties are not, we're still going to prepare ourselves in Comal and in Bear County in case any future reimbursement came from it. And Governor Abbott has requested a presidential disaster declaration for the state related to the severe weather storm. And as of yesterday, the presidential declaration decision had not been made. So it's still waiting at the federal level. And just for your information, from the federal and state level, the storm has been named, and it is called the Winter Storm Mara. So if you hear any information on Winter Storm Mara, Mara, M-A-R-A. Tobin, anything I missed? It's a quick update, covers all the basic
No, sir.
information.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
From the presentations, last council meeting, is this contractor going to be picking up and hauling, or
Hauling.
It'll be a combination of, it's all hauling ultimately, but they'll be pushing brush, especially on, hard to navigate cul-de-sacs down into skid steers, and then picking that all up, monitoring and hauling it off, but no chipping on site.
I have a question. I was just looking at the website, the last update. Are we going to be updating, I know they're starting with Kindle, are we going to be updating as we go along what days, what neighborhoods are going to be on? And the only reason I'm asking this is I have one of my neighbors, and I don't know who else is doing that, who's hoarding all his limbs in the backyard because he doesn't want to put it on the grass and kill the grass. So he's been texting me like literally every other day, when's our day, when's our day, when's our day? So are we going to make that level of announcement, or should we just push out, everybody get your brush out, starting Monday?
Mayor, do you want to, at least share the tactical plan at this point?
Yeah, so right now, what he'll do is he'll come in with skid steers, and they're gonna push the brush into bigger piles because they're coming in with big trucks, and they don't want to maneuver the trucks all over the city. And so what you're asking is, are we going to come up with specific days? And I would say more of a specific time frame. And so for the northern part of our city, he's given us probably a week to 9 days to complete it.
Okay.
So
But we still need to push out, okay, what does the northern part of the city consist of?
if you're in
These
Kendall,
certain
if
neighborhoods.
you are in Kendall
Kendall County, okay. So Monday to Wednesday of the next week. So basically have,
from Monday till Wednesday of next week, it is possible that your brush will get pushed.
so it needs to be out by Monday. At least they need to be out by the first day they start in that county.
Yes.
That's the message we should push
I
out.
think to make it safe, yes, that they'll get picked up.
Needs to be put out on the curb by the first day of pickup for your county.
Because one of the challenges is if they come through, if they make a pass through the area and the brush is not out, then they have missed their opportunity.
Well, and that needs to be said too.
It
That's
is
why I
in-
think we need to push the first day. Are y'all planning on posting that?
Yes, ma'am. So the communications plan is we're going to be pushing out messages daily. So as an example, there'll be some messaging going out tomorrow, letting everybody know this is going to be starting on Monday, north part of the city in Stone Creek. We anticipate the first 2 days is just the contractor pushing and organizing, consolidating the brush. The first trucks hauling away probably won't start until Wednesday. So we'll go through a couple days of that, and we're going to understand how much they can do in a day, what everybody's capacity is, and then as we learn, we will start pushing out messages. Okay, we think we might be in the Keeneland area over the next couple days. Put it out. We may be in this area. So we're going to do the best we can to notify in advance on a daily basis where we're at.
Hey, I have one more question, unless, I don't.
Go ahead.
When they're pushing these brush piles into bigger piles, are they going to be blocking any streets while doing that? Like, especially like in the neighborhoods, like how are they going to push them into bigger piles?
We hope not, right? There's going to be some pain points. We are identifying places for them to locate the skid steers, corners of streets, certain areas. That's going to be decided as they move through in concert with our city staff that's going to be monitoring each and every truck that comes. I will say we're not going to plan on blocking any streets or diverting any traffic. We will always have at least one lane open and the proper traffic control in place where it's warranted. But I can't emphasize enough, as a community, all of us, I want to thank everybody for their patience up to this point, but I encourage everybody to continue that practice because it is going to be 6 to 9 weeks of pain points removing this, and we're going to do the best we can to make it least intrusive, but the ultimate goal is to get it out of the city.
And they're not going to be raking these bigger piles onto other people's property either, right?
We're going to try and keep all the piles on the right-of-way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That's the goal.
Thank you.
And the question you had, are they going to be blocking streets? With the brush, what he assured us is no with the brush. What we may see is during the time that they're picking up the brush, there may be, which would be short opportunities where the truck would be in place. And
Okay.
it may block traffic then.
I'm just gonna offer, I've seen a lot of areas, but I'm just gonna pick on the cul-de-sac that I'm on right now. If they try to accumulate the amount of brush that's on our cul-de-sac, they will have no choice in my mind except to either block the street totally or put it onto somebody's property while they accumulate it, because there's that much, and there's not a whole lot of right-of-way to work with. Some of the properties are fenced and whatnot. So I guess it's just going to be real interesting to see how that process works out when you have the places where there's quite a bit.
Absolutely, and we hope as we get through this first couple days and we're going to better understand that and where we're heading over the next 2 or 3 days. And if we need to secure, a corner or someone's property, a vacant lot, we're going to have the advanced team out there talking to those property owners. We hope that that's minimal. I just can't tell you it's not going to happen, but it's not going to happen without people's permission. We will certainly be communicating.
I would just say that that's going to be the biggest thing is just make sure, and I know you said you have a plan to do it daily, but if we're going to be doing something, we really push out a lot of communications.
100% agree.
Any other comments? Any other questions or comments from anybody here tonight? And Chief, I left you out. Was there anything that I missed you want to add as part of the? Okay, thank you. Well, that completes the consideration items that we had for tonight. Now we'll move on to our workshops. First up is our five-year financial planning model.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Scott Husengay, Assistant City Manager. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce to you all the first what we're calling the beta version, and we'll talk about what that means of our five-year financial plan. As we go through this, we'll talk about our cycle, and typically this is something that I envision we would do in conjunction with our second quarter financial report, which is around the May, usually the first council meeting in May timeframe, because the second quarter is what we use to those are the projections we use to input our annual budget process. But for this presentation, we wanted to come to council early to get feedback on the plan, on options, on potential outputs that we can hone this in more for future iterations. So as we formally unveil this part of our annual budget and planning cycle, it should be ultimately more reflective of the outputs you want to see and some of the assumptions you want to make. Before we get into the details, excuse me, I want to talk a little bit about what this specific version tonight is not. So I'm going to emphasize it's not a forecast. It's not meant to predict exactly what will happen next year, 2 years, 5 years from now. It's intended to provide outcomes based on a certain set of assumptions that are provided there, and we'll drill down into the scenarios as we go into the presentation. It's also not a recommendation. So if for those who've had a chance to look through the plan of the 3 scenarios, we're not saying as staff, as a body, these are the options you should choose from. These are examples that we want your input on how to make them, how to reflect your direction and policy. We just want to provide some of the mechanics and outcomes that could occur based on the model. I'll probably use model and plan interchangeably throughout this. I'll try not to say forecast. And, but ultimately, we just want this to be something that can help council drive policy and then therefore the assumptions. So before I go in, I of course have to acknowledge our finance department. It's been a big night for them already tonight, but especially Julie Lovelace, who really did the heavy lifting on this model. She took, really just a couple of examples from my prior lives, some key assumptions, and took it from there almost cradle to grave. So great work, especially in a condensed time frame and getting it this far. And let's see if Chief broke my clicker. Which,
Does it turn on?
there we go.
I don't think it was
Might be
turned
user
on.
error. Okay, so I want to start with our planning and budget cycle, or what I sometimes call our circle of life. We talked about this way back last June, prior to the council strategic planning meeting in last year's cycle. The purpose of this illustration is to document how planning influences the budget cycle and the feedback loop that goes between planning and strategy resource allocation. Right now, we're essentially at the beginning of the budget preparation process, where we start to get both internal and external input on the strategic plan and on the budget. And while this is a little bit outside of the scope of this particular presentation, this would be a good time, really an ideal time for the council to consider the process by which you want to review the strategic plan pillars and priorities for the upcoming budget cycle as well, in advance of the annual budget process coming soon. So the first step in the cycle is the strategic plan, the pillars, identifying the pillars and priorities, or updating the pillars and priorities in our strategic plan. And typically, like I mentioned, after that, we move into what would now be our long-term financial plan process, which again would typically be around the second quarter of the fiscal year. And those two pieces together would guide the annual budget development, identify the key priorities up front to essentially populate the first draft of the budget. So moving forward, by the time we get to the annual budget process itself, we'll have an updated strategic plan. We'll also have an updated long-term financial plan that is influenced by the strategic plan. So at that point, the budget becomes what I call the one-year snapshot of the 5-year plan. When done correctly, when done right, the annual budget shouldn't have a lot of surprises. Ideally, we've talked about most of the items already in there through both the strategic plan and the long-term financial plan. And then we go to the annual report, and the cycle repeats. But the development of this plan was one of the remaining items in remaining priorities in our current strategic plan. It's priority 1.2 if you're scoring at home. So this fulfills a big piece of that financial integrity pillar in rolling out this financial plan. I hope this shows that the building blocks are already there. Now we just need to refine this process and implement, and of course that's where you come in. So we'll get into a few of the details of the plan here in a second, but in other plans I've worked on in some of my past lives, the long-term financial plan was, in the development of them, was largely in response to what I usually call the perennial budget busters. These are familiar to most entities, public and private. Personnel costs, capital improvements, debt service are the kind of the big three that guide most budgets and the stressors. I think our process, both in terms of financial and strategic planning, has been pretty typical of what I've seen in other organizations in starting small and building into a cohesive, fully grown up cycle over time. I'm glad to get to start on the ground floor of this process again. I think it's an exciting time. I'm nerding out a little bit, but long-term planning and strategic planning is kind of my thing, so I'm excited we're here. So we mentioned at the top that we're calling this our beta version. It was, like I said, built a little bit earlier than we probably normally would do that, but again, we want to give you a preview of kind of how it works and work out some of the proverbial kinks, as it were. So while there is considerable time that has been invested in this, I still consider it very much a draft. But as we get into the scenarios or into the plan or the model, we will run, as I mentioned, we'll run scenarios. Again, we're not calling them projections. We're not forecasting the future. We're not trying to predict what will happen, but again, we're providing outcomes based on certain assumptions. So the model can be used the model can be used, obviously, during the budget process. It can also be used on demand. So this is not a static financial plan that's one point in time. As we come with new ideas, new strategies, we can model them on the fly, as it were, and determine how it will impact the upcoming budget and several budgets out, as the case may be. So when we go into the five-year financial plan itself, we typically start out with a baseline scenario, which is just known knowns, as I call them, like expected wages and benefits, current debt service, projected growth, things we reasonably know have occurred or will occur. Perhaps most importantly for us in the baseline is the capital improvements plan as it stands today. Usually the baseline scenario is less than ideal in its financial outcomes, given what's already input into the plan. Our model is no exception to that. If you look at the baseline scenario, after a few years, it looks pretty nasty. So we propose one or more balanced scenarios to try and give examples how we can fix the baseline, as it were. In this case, we developed two balanced scenarios. Again, these are for display purposes only, but we drafted a potential pay-as-you-go scenario, and that essentially pushes out our capital improvements plan, selected projects, which are highlighted in the plan, out past the 5-year time frame, so that the city would essentially stay solvent and not go into the negative in reserves by taking on all of those capital improvement projects on a cash basis that we can't afford. So the pay-as-you-go scenario would not introduce debt service, but it would just broaden out the phasing of those projects.
Scott, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but just curious, and I don't know if the model's to this point, but a question I would always have on that when you say, well, I'm just going to stretch out my capital, and you're probably going to stretch out your maintenance. So how does the model, it's just a 5-year model, how does it deal with infrastructure, which has a much longer planning window than 5 years to know that you're not dropping off a cliff somewhere out there in the future?
The model can go out more than 5 years. I personally like 5 years because, frankly, in my experience, even projecting out 5 years is pretty difficult. Trying to determine what's going to happen 10 years from now is.
And I get that from the dimension that you're talking about. What I'm talking about is infrastructure, equipment, road surfaces, things like that have a life expectancy. They have a service life that goes beyond 5 years. And so how do you set up a pay as you go and know where you fall off cliffs on certain infrastructure?
We do have what I think is not think it is, a very robust, detailed equipment replacement plan already. So all the various types of vehicles and heavy equipment we have that on a rolling cycle already. So we can stretch that out over a number of years. On the capital improvement side, so drainage projects, roads, et cetera, those, perhaps where you're going is the model would have to both account for inflationary factors that go along with construction, as well as one thing that we need to do in advance in this specific plan before we come back with the formal one is get with Grant's team and update that CIP for current numbers.
Let me see if I apologize, I didn't get much sleep last night, and I had a long day. So let me see if I can ask in a very practical way. I have a house, it's got a roof on it.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's a 30-year roof. If I do pay-as-you-go, unless I'm willing to raise revenues, I'm stretching that 30-year roof into a 40 or 50-year roof if I don't raise revenues to pay as I go. And that when you're doing infrastructure, that's the concern I have, is how does the model predict that in a way where you don't just ride along fat and happy for 5 years, not realizing that some future council is sitting out there waiting to make up that deficit in investment.
Sure.
At some point beyond that 5-year planning window.
Yeah, this model, I don't think, if I'm understanding you correctly, does that directly. What it can do is take for example, the PCI numbers that the Public Works team has, for example, as it relates to street maintenance, and look at what those projected requirements are over the next number of years, and we can plug those numbers on a dollar basis into this model. So it doesn't predict infrastructural conditions, but we can input the financial impacts of said infrastructure conditions. And we can do that over 5 years, 10 years. Hypothetically, we can go out 30 years. That gets into some long-range modeling that involves both operations and infrastructure, but it's theoretically possible. But as far as the actual data that goes into it, there are some external models and factors that do go into this that's outside just the finance world. I hope that partially answers your question.
I think for purposes of tonight, I understand what the limitations are. Thanks.
Okay. So back on the scenarios, Councilmember brings up a good point that we've taken the capital improvements plan as it's existed for basically the last, I'll say, 8 months, give or take, during and after the budget presentation. So we haven't updated anything as far as the timing, anything that has been chosen to defer, and any potential project escalations, those have not been updated. That would be one change we would bring back to you as part of the formal 5-year financial plan. But just understand that the capital improvements plan as it exists in this model right now is the same capital improvements plan we had last fall. So based on that, the PAYGO scenario, again, simply modifies the timing to stretch that out. The other balanced scenario we tried to propose, again, all else being equal, is a bond scenario. And the bond scenario would be essentially supported by property tax support to fund the same CIP program. That's modeled over a 20-year period we'll talk about, but it models the first 5 years in this model. So we'll drill down just a little bit into the baseline assumptions, the known knowns. And again, these are not all encompassing, but the point of bringing these up, reporting them in the plan, is to be as transparent as possible about what all the assumptions we're making in the plan are. So the baseline assumes 3.5% property tax revenue growth per year. That's the maximum voter approval rate. We're assuming sales tax growth of 3% per year, which is fairly conservative in the long term, but as we've seen, that can ebb and flow sometimes dramatically from year to year, up and down. Sales tax is a relatively volatile revenue source, albeit a significant one for us. On the expenditure side, we assume 2.5 merit increases as our adopted compensation plan calls for. We're also assuming that the employee cost index, or ECI, goes down to about 2% after inflationary periods of the last couple of years. Obviously, we don't know exactly how that ECI will look. Of course, the ECI influences the cost of living decision per council policy. We won't know probably till mid-July what that ECI will look like from year to year, but we're taking a conservative approach in the model here. We assume health insurance and professional services increase a little faster than most other operating expenditures. And again, these are all assumptions. They can be adjusted. But this is just to give a good understanding of what we're assuming in the baseline.
Hey, Scott, I think you had a good point there, is that these are the assumptions that y'all utilized to start the financial planning model. And, you know, it's the first time it's being presented to council. And, you know, maybe in the future it is something that we may want to take a look at as the assumptions and have some discussion on what are assumptions we should use, because we need
Absolutely.
assumptions to plan out, because we're not going to know for sure, but we need something that's concrete, assumption-wise, that we can work with to build a model against.
And that well said. That's exactly what would be helpful to me and to the staff, is to have, for lack of a better, a workshop that goes through this model in a little more detail to drill down what exactly those assumptions are the council wants to see, both in terms of the baseline and then any programmatic changes we want to make. If we want to, I don't want to make any assumptions, but if there are any new FTEs we want, or a new program of some kind, if there are any CIP projects we want to add or subtract, you know, those are discussions that all shape and frame this plan, so we can come back and model those for the council. And once that's signed off on by the council, we can use that to build our budget going forward. So that's exactly where we'd like to go with this. So thank you. So the assumptions and the 5-year numbers that the model generates are all in your packet. But I want to point out the dashboards and some of the key metrics that the model uses, and we can change the dashboard too. All of this is very flexible, but we started with basically 6 metrics to give you some flavor of where these scenarios go. One of the key metrics that the model generates, of course, is, you know, revenues versus expenditures, or structural balance over the 5-year period. That is directly related to reserves, which is shown on the right. So unsurprisingly, with no modifications either to the CIP or to our financing, the baseline scenario is not sustainable, and that's primarily driven by, if you look at our proposed CIP, SAP plan in the out years, you see some pretty large numbers there, which makes it virtually impossible to do it on a cash basis. Yes, ma'am.
Looking at your baseline assumptions, you don't mention anything about CIP and SAP, so what was your assumptions that you used for this expenditure baseline based off of CIP?
In the full report in the packet, all of the projects and by year are listed in there. So we took the CIPs, so for road raise, drainage, and well, water, wastewater isn't in the model right now, but as adopted by the council over the last year and a half.
So you're assuming that we're just going to pay as you go. I guess that's my interesting, but the difference is because you're making an assumption we're just going to pay for it out of the budget and nothing else.
That's what the baseline does,
Okay.
yes. It essentially shows that, we really can't do that, right? But that's what the baseline does. Just so that if we wanted to pay for everything in cash, no changes to operations or revenue streams, this is how the finances would look after.
Scott, so
2
my
to 5
understanding,
years.
there is a schedule out there that lays out all the capital improvement projects. And so it is that schedule that you utilize to build this baseline scenario.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that is the defined schedule that we're utilizing, but you had to have something that you were working off of.
Absolutely not. And one of the
And so
key-
you built a schedule.
And one of the key discussion points is the council as a body will likely have to make some modifications to that schedule, either in terms of the types of projects, number of projects, or the schedule of
So
said projects.
You're referring to page 82 in our packet, is that right? The baseline scenario strategic plan.
Yeah, I don't have the full packet, but it's, I believe you're right, though, council member. It's.
Okay, so that includes a lot of drainage projects,
Mm-hmm.
roadway reconstruction projects, sidewalks, civic center.
Yes, that's correct. It is 82.
Okay. So really, the predominant out years are drainage, CIP, and road. CIP.
Drainage and roadways, yes.
Okay. And those were just the must-dos on the CIPs, correct? I think that's what we
I
agreed to.
believe so. I'd probably defer to Grant to quality check me on that one. But
Must-dos. Because we also have a list of nice-to-dos and should-dos,
and I-
too, beyond this. Okay.
Correct, correct.
This is just the must-dos.
Do you want?
You know, again, the comment I'll make on that, when you start doing these kinds of things, you push project lines out, then maintenance goes from it becomes a capital improvement program, because now you've got to do a lot more extensive investment to recover back to some usable form of that asset. So I just think that the graph that's up there on the wall is worth paying attention to, because you can juggle the projects and you can stretch timelines, but you're really not even buying time. It just ends up catching up with you.
Thank you. Just to quickly address the must do, should do, should do, nice to do. So in our roadway CIP, we didn't use those metrics. We just had basically 4 major projects. To reconstruct Dietz, Ammon, Rolling Acres, and then Post Oak Trail. And then we had a few sidewalk projects thrown into there, so we didn't really use those metrics, but we did use it for the drainage CIP. And we included all the must-dos and the should-dos in the 5-year
Okay, so the
CIP,
should-dos are in here as well.
but not the nice-to-dos for the drainage
Okay.
portion.
Thank you.
So again, not a recommendation, just a model. A couple other metrics as we go through the outputs on these. We also like to model how our expenditures by program will look. I like to call this our portfolio of services. The graph on the left, I could do much like our personal portfolio. What mix do we want to see after 5 years? Oftentimes, it's hard to make really substantial changes programmatically in 1 year for any variety of reasons. So in 5 years or longer, sometimes it's possible. So I like to look at this as, is this how we want our portfolio to look? The graph on the right, the expenditures allocated by program is similar. It's by the same categories. It just gives you the 5-year spend by program. So you can see particularly the green bars, that represents transfers, which is our equipment and capital transfers primarily. So you can see the relatively sporadic nature of the CIP program as it exists right now. And finally, we did have one that shows just operating versus capital, which is much like the previous chart by program, just on a higher level. And I guess for the big finish, we can also model expected tax rates and average tax impacts based on the model as well. As we've discussed in various times, various forums of this body, a change in tax rate isn't necessarily the same as an average tax impact. For example, the 32.91, I think it is, cents in the current year is not necessarily the same movement over time as the tax impact. The reverse can also be true. Sometimes tax rate can go up while tax impact goes down, and vice versa. So it depends on valuation. We haven't seen the reverse happen in a number of years, but for reference purposes, how we're deriving these numbers is we assume that, excuse me, over the next 5 years, we're assuming total citywide taxable valuation growth of 10% for the first 3 years, and so years 1, 2, and 3, and 5% in years 4 and 5. And those are just high-level estimates. And the reason for that, in a nutshell, is all of us will recall that last year when valuations came out, we saw increases ranging from 24 to 30% for the most part. And we also know that we're 92, 93% homesteads in this city, and the state has a homestead cap of 10%. So it's going to take a number of years for that homestead cap taxable valuation to catch up to the valuation increases we're seeing. So it's reasonable to assume that for at least 3 years, we're going to see that 10% cap in taxable valuation growth. It may go on longer than 3 years, but again, for the sake of the model, we presume 10, 10, 10, 5, and 5 in taxable valuation growth. That's how we derive the tax rates and ultimately the tax impacts on the what we're doing as the median household in the city. Questions so far? If not, I'll quickly go through the pay-go and the balanced and the bond programs because most of the outputs are about the same. Again, the pay-go assumption uses all the same assumptions as the baseline. The only difference is it pushes the project schedules for our current CIP out past the 5-year time frame, which we talked about before. And the idea is just to stay on the right side of the ledger for the cash flow, on a cash flow basis, notwithstanding all of the concerns that Councilmember Elizondo and others pointed out already with regard to infrastructure impacts, et cetera. So here, expenditures still exceed revenues in most years, but we don't fully deplete our reserves, although it should be noted in this pay-go scenario, reserves still fall below the adopted policy of 50% after a year, well, I guess right away, but fall to about 30% by year 3. So while we stay current, we fall below our policy. Similarly, on the portfolio of services, that doesn't change too much except for probably that green pie slice. That's our capital. Because we're pushing out the capital program farther, we see less investment in capital improvements under this scenario. And you can see the same on the stack column chart, that those green bars are smaller than the baseline. And finally,
To Scott, so just so I understand, so what you're doing is taking those same projects, must do, should do,
Yep.
DARP, and just extending them all the way through as far as we have to, so that we don't deplete our reserves too much, that we just stay at a balanced neutral, if you
Right,
will, like
so-
a balanced budget, if you will.
it's one option of how long the projects would take to complete without, without depleting our reserves, without increasing taxes, without taking on debt. Again, this isn't the only mix for sure that could be chosen. This is one hypothetical example.
That goes out to 2032.
Right.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's without including any new projects.
That's correct. So in the pay-go scenario, we haven't changed any of the tax rate assumptions either. So the revenue and the impacts are the same as the baseline. Again, the only thing that has changed, again, to Councilmember Kerner's point, is the timing of the projects. Finally, we did put in just a hypothetical bond program as well. We used, again, the same baseline assumptions, same project schedule, and other than that, the bond issue scenario is relatively simple. It incorporated an $18 million bond program. It'd be distributed at three different tranches over about 5 years, with 20-year periods each at 3.5%. In practice, those issues would probably be a little bit different based on the actual project time, but we tried to put a little bit of a staggered approach into a total of $18 million to pay for the bond. But again, the model's intended to be directional, not necessarily absolute, especially when you're talking multi-years out, but just to show roughly what an $18 million bond program would look like. So again, you see the same types of charts, but this scenario models the INS property rate, or the debt property tax rate, to effectively mirror the level of debt service that's needed each year for that bond issue, or come close to it, while paying for operations. So this scenario stays balanced over the 5 years. It also maintains the city's adopted reserve, and there is some unallocated fund balance in here as well if you look at the final scenario and look at over the 5 years. But again, the key variable in this model was a change to the tax-supported debt rate to support that hypothetical bond program. So that's what you'll see on the last slide. As I go past quickly, again, the portfolio services and the expenditures by program, again, the capital is higher than the PAYGO scenario, basically the same as the baseline, but the big change is the tax rate, specific and the impacts. Because we're now paying for bond debt service, the tax rate, initially decreases and then increases as more of those bonds get issued, or the specific tranches get issued. It does still, even under this model, remain below the current tax rate, 32%. So even in year 5, it's less than it is in the current year, FY23. That's going to be due to your valuation increases that we talked about before. But we can model, again, based on these assumptions, what our current operations and a bond issue would look like 5 years out. The tax bill obviously would increase over 5 years because we're paying for debt. So for the average household, in the baseline scenario, the average tax bill was about, I think it was, I hope I wrote these down right, $2,182. And then with this tax support, it's $2,582, a difference of, I think, $340 over the 5-year time period to pay for that capital supported debt. Again, all of that will change based on conditions on the ground, as it were, but as we get closer to making those capital decisions, whether the debt supported or not, their cash flow, the combination thereof, this model is built to more fine-tune these outputs as well. So again, we're using very high-level assumptions, very basic assumptions right now, but we can get a lot more detail, a lot more specific with council input, and as we move through this cycle and we know more about both our budget and our valuation over time.
No,
One more
that's all right.
question. Going back to your original baseline assumptions, you didn't include increases in houses, like growth in the city. Because whenever we do some of those CIPs, we're building for however more people are coming. But I don't see you build into the baseline any more of those houses coming in, just the costs for the house.
It's an excellent point. We have not done that. The short answer is we could. We just weren't at that stage of development. Other models I've passed have done that. It would probably change that taxable valuation growth. I hate to guess, but instead of 10%, we could factor in, say we're assuming 20 houses per year. I'm not sure exactly what percentage that would be, but it might go from like 10 to 12% based on the new growth, something like that.
Could we use the same assumptions we used when we developed the CIP and the wastewater master plan and all of our master plans? We use some assumption there. Why wouldn't we just use that same assumption with our potential growth of taxes coming in?
We could.
Okay. I think that might help with this. I mean, I love this, by the way. This is
mhm,
great. But I think that
No,
might help really show, because we're assuming there's not one house built between now and 2028 in this
That's
assumption.
true. No,
right?
that's a great suggestion. It's this is probably only relevant to me, but in past lives, we did do that and it didn't get any attention. So I appreciate that you're asking that now.
Oh, you don't want to know all my questions.
But no, it's a good suggestion. We
Okay.
absolutely could do that. Again, and just like everything else we're doing, we'd have to make some assumptions, some educated guesses, but that's very possible.
No, I think that would be a good add. I like what we have so far. Thanks.
Would we also include the additional infrastructure projects that would be associated with that growth, net of the contributions made to construction?
We could. I'd have to consult with our public works director and our engineers, but also possible.
So it's just adding more layers of information in here. I just want to also introduce a comment, because one of the things, you have to go back and say, what's the point of doing all this? And the point is so that we can, to me, better project. We want more predictability on what our cost is. We want more predictability about how we're going to source the funds to pay for those costs. And I just want to go back to kind of a core purpose of it, really, to me, is, and I'm looking at Miss Phillips over here, because when I first moved to the ranch, she kind of educated me what this place was all about. And it was about, given what we were doing together at the time, maintaining Fair Oaks Ranch as a high-class residential community. And so to do that, to me, it's very important to maintain our level of investment in the community. It constantly, it's just like your house. You have to keep up with the maintenance. You know, you look for ways to do improvements to increase your quality of life while you live there. Well, same goes for the city. So to me, the plan, the model that's adopted by the city, I think it would be a really good thing if it incorporated that as part of the purpose, is not just to, you know, look at a graph of what's happening, you know, with the capital spend or the, you know, sources of funds, but to say, what are we trying to achieve here? This is just to try to give us visibility on how we manage the underlying details to be able to achieve that vision. So I think it's important to bring in those additional factors about the growth, because they do affect our cost of operations and cost. I think they're trying to shut me down. No. But when we look at these numbers, like the taxes and stuff, I mean, let's just please keep that perspective about what we're trying to do with the community as a whole. Thanks.
I think that's a fair point. We often do, you know, focus on the revenue side of that property growth, and often we don't necessarily see the impacts of said growth for a number of years. So, if in the life cycle of development for the first, you know, 10 to 15 years, you're sort of on the positive side of that ledger, but as that infrastructure catches up, that's when you see those O&M costs rise, and which might have been the point you were getting at earlier. At least to some degree, maybe not.
Well, it was also the O&M and saying, you know, you're missing the part of the window where, you know, some of your infrastructure gets to be end of life, and if you haven't started putting the money away back in year one, then you hit a wall there in year 15, when now all of a sudden you've got a big project and you don't have the funds in the bank, if you're going to go with one of those funding strategies.
But absolutely have to plan for future maintenance. Yeah,
Which is why a lot of places use bonds to kind of smooth the effects of that.
exactly. I think I'm close to the end. Summary, I guess. So, again, as I mentioned, these are all, you know, relatively simple models based on, for the most part, all else equal assumptions with only minor variances in each plan. So again, as this discussion evolves with the council, we can, I mentioned, model more complex scenarios in theory. The scenarios are literally endless. We can take this anywhere you want, but it is intended to be flexible, and it, again, should be considered directional as a guide for the council to develop its long-term financial strategy, as well as inform the budget. So it doesn't make it absolute, but I hope it's helpful, at least as a long-term determinant for both the strategic and financial decisions that we make. Again, this can be done at any time, not just during the budget. It should be considered a rolling plan. It can respond to changes in the environment or programmatic changes that we come up, whether it's during the budget process or not. And it's also ideally to help all of us gain consensus on that direction as we go through the strategic and planning budget process. So again, as we get into the annual budget, we have consensus on what those long-term projects we are trying to achieve are, and we can populate the budget based on that. So it should ultimately integrate with the strategic plan and the budget, be that link between the two that puts the finances to the strategic plan. Then the strategic plan becomes not just a theoretical exercise, but one that's more actionable and funded and sustained in the long term. So with that, I think that's the end of my presentation. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to take them.
Good.
I think this is great. This was within the first month of being on council, we created our first strategic action plan, and one of them was to create a 5-year financial plan. And I'm glad to see it here while I'm still in my tenure. I appreciate it. This is exactly what I was looking at for, because every time we go into budget, we're like, oh, what project should we do? Oh, how are we going to fund it? And I would rather have that list and that stuff set up, and then we're really just talking about significant changes that we need to make one way or the other, or small variations that happen year to year. So I really appreciate that. What is the next step here for us? What do we do with what you just presented?
So ideally, and I know we have a lot of things coming up, but what I would suggest is a follow-up to this discussion, whether that's in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or soon, sometime before the end of May, so we can so we can develop this further and come back and present the updated version based on your feedback, and then use that to begin our budget process, which starts with the council, primarily in June, but with some preliminary discussions before that. So if I had my druthers, I would put this back on certainly within the next month.
So Scott, what you presented tonight was a model with information. It's not the information that has been identified for the future development. That's really what we need to work with to put in the model. And you provide a baseline, pay-as-you-go, and a bond program type of model with this. My thoughts is that it should all be one. It's one model that we're allowed to utilize, really pay-as-you-go or a bond program. And through the model, that's what we're really trying to decide, how we're going to resource the projects that we've identified. So what Laura was talking about, or what I interpreted, is that so we've gone into our yearly planning or our yearly budget, and we make decisions as part of that year of what we're going to fund and what we're going to purchase. And some of those, if we decide to hire an FTE to do drainage maintenance, that FTE carries on for 5 years. And so it impacts the budget more than just the budget that we've identified for that year. We need to carry that forward in our 5-year plan. And then some of it was what Roy was speaking of, is when we identify maintenance upgrades or things that we've identified, we need to include that as part of the plan, and so we have it listed out there. Part of what we were discussing was CIPs. And so a little over a year ago, we approved the water, wastewater, stormwater, and our road CIPs. But yet, as far as I know, we never developed any timeline of how those were going to be executed. So we didn't really provide a whole lot of guidance. I think there was some, am I misspeaking, Tobin, or?
Go on, and I'll have some comments at the end.
But the challenge is that we've identified all these things we want to do. What we haven't done is put it to any model on how it was going to be resourced. And then last example, it really relates to, I know it's part of our enterprise fund, but if you take the example and just relate it, so we've talked about our wastewater feasibility study. So we've looked at a price of what it will take to accomplish that. But along with it, as we increase the capabilities of it, what we would need to consider is the increase in FTEs, the increase in equipment, and the increase in supplies, which then goes back into the budget. And so those have to be incorporated into. So I guess in roundabout, this produces a model that each year as we go through our planning cycle, we get to that point, we've gone through our strategic action plan and our CIPs, and now we're entering into the model phase. So now we can look at this and move items around as needed. Hopefully it's, as we smooth this out, we're not moving much. But it's all based on the core assumptions that we put into this. So I hope I'm explaining this in a method that you understand. So what's the way ahead? And so for me, one, it would be, I believe we just need to address the core assumptions have some discussion on that, on what it is that, I mean, we started some of it in here, but we didn't have a thorough discussion on it. And I believe if we laid it all out, you've covered a lot, and my belief is what you covered are good, but there may be other things that we want to consider that are a part of this. My other thoughts is I don't know that we go forward with three types of scenarios, a baseline, pay-as-you-go, and is there a way that we could put it all into one so that we can make modifications and see what the impacts are? And then we need to decide on what is the focus of that impact. Is it no new revenue rate, or there ought to be something out there that becomes our key focus of what it is that we want to concentrate on as part of the budget modeling.
You teased something out of me and over my
I apologize.
deep dark experience about, you know, and it has to do with the hybridization of some of this because, you know, sometimes you can take some aspect of the organization and you can use a pay-as-you-go, and then the other part you say you use finance, you know, some kind of other financing scheme. And so I think it is possible to consider whether certain of the core service operations that the city does could try to be operated on a pay-as-you-go model to try to keep O&M costs, if you will, you know, more stable, have some kind of cost control driver out there for that. But to me, what I've typically seen is when you want to maintain a capital program well, you can smooth the impacts on the revenue side by using, you know, some kind of a finance plan like selling bonds or whatever to be able to do that. So you don't have these spikes. Well, this is the year we have to replace the car, and so you have to go figure out where to get the money to play the car, and you either have to kick something off the table to get, you know, scavenge the cash for the car, or you just smooth that out and amortize it, which is more typical of an ongoing enterprise. But I think you're right. I mean, that's the thing you teased out of my brain, Greg, is that I don't think it has to be all one strategy. It does make the model more complex, so I apologize to y'all in advance for having said that or suggested that, but thanks.
No, good comments. And Mayor, to your point, going forward, I wouldn't recommend looking at 3 scenarios at a time. We did that here just to show 2 very almost extreme.
Right.
Just to show what the model does and how it works. But ideally, we would get to a blend of a balanced scenario based on what you're talking about. And a key driver when we have this discussion, and not the only driver, but a key one will be, you know, do we have the appetite for a bond program? And if so, how do we want that to look? Or in lieu of that, are there other options, financing or different types of projects? But those are the inputs we need.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I think there's one other step that we might be missing. I think we started it and then we kind of paused, which is, I think we need to look at the strategic plan. We started talking about it. We looked at the pillars. I gave suggestions. Other people, they gave suggestions, and then we kind of paused. But if we don't agree on the pillars and the projects to begin with, then that's like the vast majority of this model.
At the next meeting, I have the growth, what do we call it? Growth management plan? Tools. Growth management tools, and what you're talking about, which we would develop a cycle that would support going into our budget planning tool. How's that? Budget planning tool. So, yes, I mean, we have a lot of tools out there. We need to utilize those to inform us so that we're making smart decisions in utilizing and then putting it into a budget planning tool so that we know that we can resource them.
I'm just concerned we started a process of reviewing the strategic plan and then it just kind of withered away. I don't even know what happened with that. I don't know. We just never came back and talked about it.
I guess the point being, I was saying, I'm going to brief next week on a process of where we can incorporate that. Yes, you are correct. We need to be reviewing the strategic action plan every year, and we probably should do it prior to going into the budgeting process.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I appreciate that, but I'm saying is we already started that, and
Oh,
then we
this
just
year.
randomly stopped. Like, we already went for like 2 hours and went in detail, every single pillar, renaming projects, doing all that stuff, and then it just disappeared. And that's why I want to know, when are we going to bring that back and finish that? Because we already started that. We had
Okay.
hours-long workshop on that. Remember, we tried to find dates, and we couldn't find dates, so then we started adding it to the workshops at the city council meetings, and then that was because I kind of remember starting that, and we got I thought we got a lot of feedback in that meeting.
July 13th, I believe.
July 13th, see? Steel trap there, you got that.
But did we lose it again? Oh, there it is.
No, you're good.
Most of those, what was discussed, at least conceptualize a draft that council can review. And we're ready to do that. Obviously, since it has been a while, we'd want to affirm that, A, we got it right, and that that's still the direction we want to see.
Well, luckily, I take very detailed notes, so I will go back and look.
but happy to bring that back.
Any other council questions, comments? Toby, do you had something you want to add, or?
Just a couple things briefly to just put on the table so that we're all on the same page. You know, so the model is in its infancy. All the core assumptions, everything that populates it, those are all council decisions. I don't think, I think the value of the model, wherever we land, is going to increase each year as it continues to calibrate and council understands what they want to plug and play. So from a next steps perspective, you know, we've talked internally, and I think we can have this item after the mayor talks about his growth management tools in that cycle, but internally, we wanted to have, you know, an advanced budget workshop where we're more on the active listening side of saying, hey, what process, what cycle, what things, what core assumptions does council want to include in the budget this year, so we can start from there and start plugging into the model. And again, that's going to calibrate itself year by year as y'all reel in. An example of what I'm talking about is the council and the staff. We've done a great job with our capital improvement programming over the years, right? So we at least have this 5-year window of all of these projects. And over the last couple of years, we've even tried to break those projects down into engineering construction. So the next granular level to start to take these things so that the model can be more effective is when council sees those projects and you say, okay, we got X for design and X for construction. I want to take 10% of that cost and cash flow it in the balance debt flow. You'll be able to model that in real time so you can decide project by project over a longer planning horizon. So one of the major next steps is to continue to massage and modernize the CIP to the level that will make this model more effective based off what you want. Those are to be defined by the council. But I can't emphasize enough that I believe we're off to a great start with the model, and each year I think it'll become more and more of a value add as council is able to digest and determine what you want the model to produce.
Anything else? Any additional questions or comments from anybody here tonight? So, Scott, one of the questions is, so what's next? So we've talked a lot about what we see as the model. Laura brought up some things that we need to look at as part of the model. What do you see? How do we keep moving this forward?
Yeah, I think, like the city manager is saying, we put this back on the agenda soon, probably after the next meeting, like we're talking about. What I will do along with our staff internally is try to facilitate a list of, or not a list, but well, starting point, a list of questions or discussion points that we need from you to input our assumptions, so that we can. My goal is just to facilitate a financial plan workshop, so we can key in on those key assumptions that we need from you, so we can populate it, bring it back. Again, ideally in conjunction with that second time frame, and use that. That's where I'd like to start.
All right. Anything else you need from us tonight?
Me? No, I'm sorry. I'm good.
Well, it was great work, and I know that y'all put a lot of effort just to get it to the level of what we're at today. And I think it provided a great start. You call it the beta version, draft version. It really gave us something that we could work with tonight and start developing. So thank you and the team.
No, appreciate your attention. I'm that it sounds like there's some value in this, so I'm very glad for that. And again, kudos, credit over here as well. I've been, and more so, but.
Okay. All right. Are you staying up here for the next one too?
Okay.
So the next workshop is the migration for city water meter reads to Census Cloud Services.
All right. So thank you again, Manager. I'll kick off the next two agenda items and then turn over to Brian. He'll be talking about two pending infrastructure technology purchases tonight. One is upgrading our Exchange server at minimum, which is, of course, our email system, and also upgrading our automated meter reading system. Both those systems are nearing or past their service life cycle dates already. We need to update those or upgrade those in order to maintain security patches and ensure continuity of service. Brian will go into more detail. But we're bringing both to a workshop first. First, the reason is, because they exceed the dollar threshold at which council has to approve. They both require council approval because they're above the $50,000 threshold that the city manager is authorized for. And they'll both require budget amendments as we proceed as well. So we wanted to bring that as a discussion point to council first. Where we go with these items ultimately will dictate in large part how we build out our IT map moving forward. Also part of our strategic plan. With some systems such as Microsoft 365 or Exchange, which Brian will talk about, there are still some options to maintain on-premises hosting on our servers with hardware and maintenance if we want to. Many systems are going to software as a service or cloud services. We've transitioned some of our software to the cloud already. Examples include the new records management system that the city secretary is working on, the WatchGuard police video system that we're implementing next month. That's going to the cloud. That was already in last year's budget. So there's on-premise versus software as a service that Brian's going to go into more detail, but we're bringing it to you because in addition to the budgetary aspects of it, how we choose these paths will influence how we choose other paths as we have to look at all of our other very many systems throughout the city and whether we want to maintain primarily an on-premises system or not. So Brian will walk through the recommendation for each and how we got here. With the council's blessing, we're looking to bring these items back as formal consideration items at the next meeting so that we can get these projects underway. A couple of them have some pretty strict timelines that Brian will talk about. But again, we'll use this as a springboard to build our IT master plan for several years, and that will influence your plan.
Scott, so as we go through this, we're doing it as a workshop item tonight, which is presenting information to council. But as the completion of this, what input or what information do you need from council to get prepared for the consideration item?
Right. So
on both, and can we just cover both items? Information that you're looking for, I assume it's similar to both.
So with and I don't want to steal all Brian's thunder here, but with the Microsoft Exchange, we essentially need direction on whether to maintain that or go to a software as a service model. And Brian talk about on-premise might be a little less expensive in the short term, probably with some long-term costs. The software as a service has more of an ongoing cost, and it will be built into it with value as well. But we need direction on one or the other. Census, which is our automated meter system, is wholly out of date already, and that's proposed as a cloud service. So we just need direction on the council's willingness to to proceed in upgrading that. I know that Grant and Julio here can speak to some of the technical aspects and shortcomings of our meter reading system as well when we get, but that's the direction we need. So which of the two options with the Microsoft system, Microsoft Exchange, and then do we have the council's blessing to proceed with the census upgrade?
Okay. Go ahead.
I think just kind of, in point of order, I think going forward, I think this seems more like a report or a consideration item. Like, staff is recommending we do one thing and we could then give a direction and a vote and then you can come back. Because to me, a workshop is, you're giving us 15 different options and we're giving you assumptions and we're talking through things, and these just seem like you're making a recommendation, which is common sense recommendations, and all you need is a vote to say go forward. And I think this would lend better, even the last one, to either a report or a discussion item. To me, unless we're rolling our arms up, rolling our sleeves up and like delving in and moving things around and sticky notes all over the place, I don't really see this as a workshop. I mean, I want the topic, I just don't understand.
Yeah, I think with this one, because of the cost, it was brought to us as a workshop item to discuss and understand before bringing it back as a consideration item. Because it's, some of the cost is significant. So it's the details of working through that. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, there are short-term and long-term implications that we briefly talked about, so that's why we presented it as a workshop. I take your point, but this is a situation, due to those long-term implications, we didn't want to make too many assumptions about the future direction of our IT infrastructure that could go out a decade without at least having some council feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can give feedback in a formal fashion through a vote or a motion, because you have so much information here already. We could probably make a vote on this without having a whole long workshop discussion on it, right? Okay.
Good point.
So if I didn't take Brian's entire presentation at this point,
No.
I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Scott. Evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Brian Lejeune, IT Manager of the Information Technology Department, and I also have Dustin Hutchinson here from Aquametric. We're going to be discussing the water meter system migration. I'll do my best to kind of summarize everything. We kind of already talked about some things, so it might be a little bit overlap, but we'll see. If you want to get deeper into some of the technical details, just let me know. Our city utilizes both census software and hardware to handle our residential and commercial water meter data. This system has radios that constantly send water consumption billing information every day to our servers as an automated process. This data then flows to Aquahawk, which is used for leak detection and usage monitoring for our customers. This system was first installed in 2014 and has had no hardware updates. With that being said, our infrastructure is aging. While we are taking precautions to safeguard our data, there is a possibility that we may not be able to recover from a disaster, even though we are backing up our systems. Aside from the disaster recovery risk, there's also the cybersecurity risk that these aging systems pose to the rest of our network, since they're no longer receiving patches or security updates. The version of census software running on our servers is a very old version and is becoming difficult to receive support as time passes. An example of a software issue is one that we just ran into last week. After a Microsoft update for our desktops changed the default web browser for all the desktops from the older Internet Explorer 11 to the newer Microsoft Edge web browser. With this newer browser came updates that initially prevented us from reaching our regular systems, like the water meter systems. A temporary configuration was implemented on our desktops to allow for access to our water meter servers. This temporary configuration will be removed every 30 days by default, and that's not something we can change, that's Microsoft dictated. This is one of the major advantages to the proposed migration. We wouldn't have to deal with those types of compatibility issues as Microsoft, updates their systems to be able to access our water meter system. Census does offer a cloud-hosted system that will replace our on-premise servers. We'll be bringing all of our historical data as a part of this migration as well. Another benefit of having our data hosted in Census Cloud is no longer having to back up our data and handle server infrastructure maintenance over the years. Their software will always be up to date since Census will be hosting the software for us. They will handle all of that. In addition to the migration, we'll be able to increase our AquaHawk update to hourly instead of every 6 hours each day. This would be an added benefit for our residents to get more timely information on leaks and water consumption than currently available today. Thank you for your time and consideration. We'll be able to answer any questions you may have. Yes.
Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, I mean, from keeping up with the technology, this sounds like a no-brainer, but I do have a question about some of the back-end stuff. Are there any benefits as far as like integration to the billing system that we'll get out of this upgrade? Or
Yeah,
is-
just as we have today, we have integration with our Encode system. We will have integration with that as well, and that's a part of the quotes that are involved in that. So there will be a tie-in, yes.
Any other questions? So Brian, the way you've laid this out, I mean, there's really no options here. We have,
Correct.
the way I understand it, what you're proposing is this.
Right, and part of that is, Census doesn't have any more on-premise versions to upgrade to. They have moved all of their customers towards the cloud.
Yep.
Is that accurate, Dustin? That is accurate. Yes, confirmed.
Right.
And all the Ps and Qs related to security and their validation that they're maintaining all of that in their computing environment is all going to be part of the contract.
Yes.
Any other questions on this item? Any questions from anybody here tonight? Okay, we'll move on to our last workshop item, which is Microsoft Exchange server migration to Microsoft 365.
Okay.
I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you. Hello again, I'm Brian Lejeune, IT manager for the IT department.
Still.
Just in case someone's bookmarking this, jumping straight here. It's an important topic. So we're here to discuss the city's email system, spam filter, and other services we use for conducting business. First, I want to address the spam filter. This issue is already being addressed by our current provider to migrate us to their newer platform scheduled to occur mid-March, so in just a couple weeks. This will extend our spam filter licensing to next fiscal year. Next, I want to discuss our email server. The city currently utilizes Microsoft Exchange Server 2013 for email. This product will reach its end of support this April. After this date, Microsoft will no longer release security and feature updates. Therefore, the city will be open to future vulnerabilities discovered by bad threat actors without the hope of Microsoft releasing any patches. An example of an issue occurred in 2021 where the city experienced a zero-day vulnerability with its version of Microsoft Exchange email server. A zero-day vulnerability is basically a known security issue without a published patch. Several 100,000 organizations around the world were impacted by this, including us. The city recovered through a lengthy process working with our insurance vendor to assess systems and to look for IOCs or indicators of compromise. Luckily, we didn't find any. Meanwhile, customers of Microsoft's Exchange Online Cloud environment were not impacted. There are two options being proposed for addressing our email server support issue, both handling the migration of our email data and requiring the assistance of a third party to reduce the amount of time for migration. Option one, we keep our email server on-premise and local. We upgrade it to the latest version available and enhance our backup infrastructure as well. This option has perpetual licensing and may have lower upfront costs without recurring annual licensing than option 2, but will require additional labor hours, training costs, and future upgrades with some unknowns at this time. Option 2, we migrate our email to the Exchange Online Cloud hosted platform for Microsoft and acquire licensing for M365. This option has annual costs associated with backing up the cloud environment and annual subscriptions for each user. The big advantage is that the M365 plan includes many enhancements that would provide staff additional productivity, collaboration tools to provide exemplary services to our customers and vendors. This Microsoft Cloud environment under M365 meets CJIS and other cybersecurity standards. With enhanced investment in information technology in recent years, the city has limited resources to keep pace with ever-expanding demands of modern organizational needs. A migration to the Microsoft Cloud environment helps the city use existing resources more effectively towards future planning and development by shifting the responsibility for security and maintenance to cloud services where appropriate and practical. Options 1 and 2 provide the choice between maintaining a status quo environment with required upgrades and a future-leaning cloud environment that migrates many Microsoft and other services to the cloud. The immediate need is the mandatory upgrade of our Exchange server. The short-term budgetary impact ranges from approximately $100,000 to $140,000 with recurring costs depending upon the options selected. Staff anticipates the budget of the upgrade can be identified through general fund projected savings in the current fiscal year, with a budget amendment later in the fiscal year if projected savings are used for other purposes. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Yeah, Michelle.
So, I'm assuming what you were talking about earlier is the whole, what was it called, the Log4j vulnerability that happened last year? Is that what you were talking about earlier?
Right.
So-
Well, no, I'm sorry. That was it's called the Hafnium. Log4j was a different incident.
Okay, but if we move up, then Microsoft 365 is responsible for any of those type of patches. And the only thing that you need to do is hound them to make sure it's going to get there quick as possible, really.
We don't even have to hound them. They are already on top of all
Well,
that.
they usually are, but sometimes you do. And then this other stuff that you're getting, so you're getting SharePoint with it, and y'all don't have that right now, correct?
Correct.
You will absolutely love SharePoint. Yeah, we use all these tools where I work at now, and we just upgraded this about a year and a half ago. I think this is a no-brainer for the Microsoft 365, but what?
No, I'm just saying,
Everybody.
uses it where they work now.
Yeah, it's true. True.
I just wanted to give the feedback that I think if y'all can shed, given the size of your shop, if you can shed some of the care and feeding stuff, get that off your plate and pushed out, I think it also, I would see as a benefit that y'all would have more free time to assist the rest of the staff in their productivity. And I think you already hit on, your time to be a little bit more strategic about how you're managing the IT here. So I kind of think the whole thing is a no-brainer too.
Anybody else? Brian, you're recommending Office 365. Is that?
M635,
I
yeah.
am.
Yeah.
Just down. Yeah. And then we bring it back, so at that time for a consideration item, I believe we're going to have a budget amendment at the same time? Is that?
Well, the goal would be to go ahead and start moving forward, and then we would, later on in the year, bring the budget amendment for you guys. Or we can bring it immediately. It's really however you want to do it.
Yeah, so that we're not vulnerable. When is it that we have to have it implemented?
Yeah, what we're proposing is that we believe we can cover the cost through other areas of savings throughout the year and then true that up at some point with council, but bringing this back as an understanding that this is where that money went.
Okay.
That's okay.
And so moving forward with this one, we just need to bring both of them back as consideration items. Is that all right? Anybody else? Thanks, Brian. Well, that completes all the workshop items that we had tonight. Announcements and reports from council members. Anybody have announcements they'd like to make?
I have one.
Go ahead.
So, council members, as you've received the invitation in your email, but I want to share that with the residents, is that the new fire station on Ralph Fair Road, as you drive up from I-10, is officially going to be opened. Yes. That's on the 11th. I believe it's at 2 p.m. It does say it's 3 hours long, but I don't think it is. It's just available because there's going to be a small presentation, and then we could take tours. So it's kind of more of an open house, if you will. But they are really excited. They would like council to show up because, you know, they will be moving personnel into that firehouse out of the, lack of a better name, Silver Fox one to the one that's on 132 Ralph Fair Road. And they'll be using the other one for storage. So going forward, after they man that facility, they'll be leaving from that location instead of the other location.
Good news, finally.
Good news.
Anybody else? Other announcements?
I just want to say thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, and to Chief Mooring and to our new fire chief. All donated experiences to the Fair Oaks Elementary School PTO fundraiser this year that happened this last Saturday. And so the mayor will be having lunch with a very lucky student who also happens to be my son. And then he also has donated time for another student who is not related to me to get to experience being mayor for a day. So that'll be very exciting.
That's so cool.
And then Chief has there were actually 2 lunches that were donated. So our SRO officer, Celise, is going to have lunch with the lucky student, and either Chief or Lieutenant Ojeda will be having lunch as well with a student. And then our fire department this is super cool. Not that the others aren't, but one of the kids, and I don't know who won this item, but they will be getting a ride to school in the fire truck.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pretty cool. But anyway, so all that goes to raise money for the PTO, which goes to support the teachers and all their needs for our kids. So thank you very much.
Reminded me of one more update.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. One more firefighter update. You just reminded me. So with the new fire chief, they've established a new event, which is the first Friday of every month. One's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Every first Friday is First Friday Firefighter Coffee and Donuts. So you could go and have an audience with the fire chief and just have some coffee and donuts with him on the first Friday of every month. So that would be tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Fair.
And this is at the District 4 Fire and Rescue, which is the Bernie Stage Road Firehouse. So you know where the Bernie Stage Road Airport is. It's right next to there. You'll have to type it in because
Cross I-10 to do that.
it's hard to get there from here. But I'll be there tomorrow, so I hope to see others there. And it's available every first Friday, and any resident or anyone in the area can come and just hang out with the firefighters and have coffee and donuts.
Anybody else? 2 quick announcements. We do have a city election coming up in May. It'll be run by Kendall County. Kendall County is looking for individuals to serve as poll workers as part of the election process. If there's anybody that's interested in serving as a poll watcher during that time period, please contact our city secretary, Christina Pachocchio, to get the information and how to sign up and get the training.
And Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone from any of our counties can volunteer. You don't have to be only a Kendall County resident.
Okay. And the last announcement I had is that yesterday we moved in our drought contingency plan from stage 2 to stage 1, which is good news. Just wanted to get the information out so everybody is aware. Even though moving to stage 1, we're still in a drought contingency, and ask for everybody to keep doing the same things that they've been doing to manage our water supply and do the right things for our city. Anything else, Tobin?
Just to piggyback a little bit on the facilities update, good news, our City Hall remodel is moving forward. Contractors are very busy. We hope that they'll be done by the end of March, but I'm not going to commit to that. I think the better estimate is mid-April, but it's coming along, so this final phase 3 will wrap up soon, and staff can move out of the portable and back into City Hall, and we can have our turnkey shop up and running.
And are there any items that any council member would like placed on a future agenda? And Laura, I did capture the strategic action plan, and so we'll add that. Anybody else? All right. And Tobin, I'm not tracking any requirements to go into the executive session tonight?
Not on our end, Mayor.
And Christine, anything else that we need from this evening? Nope.
Sir.
Tobin, anything else that we missed? All right. I have the time now is 8:46, and we are adjourned.